Hello fellow glue sniffers and sprue snippers. Welcome back to Blitzkrieg Model Works. I'm Bob, you know me as Darklin on the forums. And from our last video you saw that I presented some of the more basic tools that I feel a beginner should have or would like to have in their arsenal to start with. So we're going to move on to a very simple kit for a beginner to start with. We're going to go with the old Italeri kit number 243 Leopard 2 battle tank. This is a very good kit for a beginner. They're fairly inexpensive. You see them from about $20–30. They came out in the 1980s. There's not a lot of detail when you compare them to like a modern Tamiya or trumpeter kit, but that just means the parts count's fairly low, meaning there's not a lot of parts that you have to deal with, a lot of small niggling parts. You have to deal mostly with road wheel parts, and the tracks are vinyl, but they're an odd length and length, not a Lincoln length, not individual links, not a full rubber band type track, but there's two separate links, or lengths I should say, per side. Kind of an odd way to do it, but still pretty simple to put together. The detail is actually pretty good. It's typical Italeri for the time. Some of their kits are kind of hit and miss, but this is a good hit kit, as it were. Again, the detail is not Tamiya or modern trumpeter, Hobby Boss, Bronco type, but it's still very acceptable for its time and builds up into a very nice kit. So what you get in the box is, to start with, you get your instruction sheet. I won't call it a book, more like a pamphlet. Very typical of the time. Very simplistic. Very easy to follow. It's multi-language. As I said, that's your parts layout right there. There is not a whole heck of a lot of parts. There are 3 sprues, not including the tracks, and there are literally 4 pieces of these length. That's all there is to deal with. So it's very simple, very easy to get along with. Most of the parts are fairly big, not a lot of small finicky stuff to deal with. Not a lot of options. The only real option is at the very last step, where you can choose to assemble the kit pretty much as is. Or if you want, you can put this big wading tunnel on top, which the commander would sit at the top of when the vehicle was going in a river underwater. Paint scheme, very simple. There's 2 different marking choices, 3 different colors. They have this temporary camouflage pattern. It's now more of a fixed thing for camouflage pattern now. But both of the original mark, you have the Deutschland and the Netherlands. We're going to do the Deutschland version, and it's all in olive drab, not the camo, but I'm actually going to do a temporary winter coating over top using a chipping technique called the hairspray technique. I've really wanted to try this out. I've seen it done. It looks really awesome. I know I'll probably suck at it the first time, but it's something I just have to do. Doing a snow leopard has always been a thing of mine, and I haven't built a leopard in years and years and years. I've had this kit probably in my collection for 20 some odd years. So the kit itself, again, fairly basic and straightforward. Unfortunately, as I've had this kit for quite a while, a lot of the parts have fallen off of the sprues. Like, for example, this is the lower hull sprue. You do get the lower hull with suspension arms that are actually separate, which is really nice. Some of these parts as well had fallen off. So these are all separate, which are really nice. They're not molded in. So you could, if you wanted, you could pose them, but as they are designed to just plug in, they stick, they don't move. It keeps everything on a nice even level keel. No real underside detail, which is fine. You never see it anyway. The upper turret, really nice anti-skid marking, little on the high side, but the texture itself is fine for 1/35 scale. Driver's hatch is molded shut, no option to open it. It is totally shut. Same with the engine deck screens. Not a bad representation of what you get, considering it's 1980s. For those of us that have been around as long as I have that have seen this, this was actually a really good kit when it first came out. Especially the intakes. I don't know how well this shows up on the camera, if it shows up at all, but you can see there's kind of a screen type texture. These are the intakes, so the air would get drawn in from the sides all the way around and into the intakes. So that's very simple. The upper turret, very simple as well. Some decent texturing. This is like a little cargo area. This is for crew storage and some equipment stowage. This is a matlet cover, so the main gun sticks out the front. This would be like a flexible tarp that would move with the gun to keep rain and the elements out. Most of the parts are suspension oriented. As I said, a bunch of parts had fallen off. This is all road wheels, idler wheels, and drive sprockets. So we still have some other road wheels on here, lots of tools, return rollers, suspension arms, and some of these are the back sides. If we turn it to the front, or sorry, that is the front. If we turn it to the front, we see quite a few sink marks. I mean, this one's really bad. These are fairly easily filled with some of the fillers that I showed earlier. I will show you how to use both the Tamiya putties and the gap filling super glues, and how much work each one is. One you have to wait for and it's easy to work with, one you can do right away but it's really difficult to work with. Caps for all the road wheels, some tow hooks, antennas, communication wire spools, an MG3, not to be confused with the MG42, this is the more modern variant. Some tools and stowage. These are ice cleats that would be bolted onto the tracks to give it more traction in the winter. And the driver and loader's hatches. So then we have the turret sprue, which the upper turret came off of there. One of the side skirts has fallen off, but you get the side skirts, you get the main 120mm gun, some tow cable, which is kind of rough. There's some mismatch molding, so there's part of the mold went this way, part of the mold went that way, and it doesn't look all that great. We'll probably just replace that with some cabling or some twine. It's easy to replicate. These are mounts for spare tracks, and the grousers, which are the ice cleats. Mirrors, which, while they're nice, there's a big knockout pin. I don't know if you can see that. There's a knockout, an ejector pin, which would be in the mold to help pop that out of this part out of the mold. That's going to be a bit of a pain to clean up, but there's a few techniques I'll show you for that. And the tracks, which came in this lovely silver. And these are very much like the full-length vinyl rubberized tracks that you'd see, where you would, there's pins on one side, holes on the other, and you just loop them over, stick the pins through the holes. For those of you that have been around in the 70s and 80s, it was very common to take like a hot screwdriver and melt that over top. We'll do pretty much the same thing with these, but this would be one side, this would be the other side. Even though they give you the ice cleats in there, there's no provision to actually use them on these. How they would actually work is these pads, this is the outside, this is the inside with the guide teeth that would go in between the road wheels. On the outside, this pad would be a hard rubber pad, and it would actually be removable. It would be held on with bolts, and you could remove it and then bolt on ice cleats, and they would put ice cleats in kind of a cross pattern every so often to help give the vehicle some traction on ice and snow. The decals, let me pull this out. There's two sets of decals in here. There's ones for the Leopard 2, done by Cartograph, very nice decal manufacturer out of Italy. These seem to have weathered quite well. They're not yellow, the backing paper hasn't turned orange. There's a little bit of wobbling, warping, whatever, from some, what am I thinking of, moisture. But it shouldn't hurt them. I don't see any evidence of lifting, so there's a couple of different options. There's even Swedish from the looks of it, or Swiss, sorry. And then this was also in the box. These have yellowed quite badly. I don't think this is for the Leopard 2 Improved. I don't believe that this was original to the kit. I'm pretty sure I picked this kit up at a swap meet at one point. So we'll be using these decals with the winter whitewash. And the only other parts, there's a few pieces like the gun mantlet, which is pretty nice. Has a chain for the machine gun and the vision, or the aiming optic port molded right on. We can make that look a little better without having to add anything. And then the rear of the turret bustle, this piece actually goes under like so. So there's going to be some gapping and some other fitment issues, I'm sure, because of the way Italeri decided to mold the kit. But we're going to show how to alleviate most of this, build a really nice kit. I'm sure this will build up really nicely out of the box. I've seen a few of them done up really, really nice. The kit, as I said, very simple to put together. We're going to start with the road wheels, and we'll do that in the next chapter. I will show you how to remove parts from the sprue and clean up the parts as necessary, how to do some puttying and filling with the putties and the super glues, how to use the setting agents, and then sanding, which will take the longest time, and where to sand and where not to bother sanding. That's a key thing. Modeling is all about illusion. So we'll show you again in the next chapter, and thank you very much for watching.